And a lot of times I would. I'd lose 100 pounds or 120, 140, and then within 6 months I would gain it back. Because the problem was I didn't know I had a disease. I just thought I had an eating problem, and so I did have a problem with eating. I had an eating disorder, but I had no idea that I had a disease. So anyway, I know about broken resolutions. So what we're going to talk about today is we're talking about letting go what doesn't work for us. And today we're going to talk about letting go to become, what I want to say, bless you, TJ, she's just a sneeze, to become what God intended us to be. Now that's, and how we do that is what we've learned to do is letting go of the new year, the old year, the new year, and what the new year looks like. We don't know what the new year is going to look like. It is about releasing perfectionism. Any of you perfectionists? Raise your hand if you're go ahead, Jeff, raise your hand. Perfectionism is, taken to the extreme, is an addiction within itself. Because when you're a perfectionist, you never quite get it right. You just keep trying, and you could have done it a little bit better. You could have spent more time. So it's about releasing perfectionism and looking at where does that come from. I hate to, this is not about the blame game, but it's somewhere along in your childhood or our childhood, there was expectations put on us or no expectations. Sometimes when a kid is maybe not as good in school as their sibling ahead of them, what that can develop into is I'm going to show you attitude, and it can turn into perfectionism, to where they're overcompensating. So letting go of the new year looks like releasing perfectionism and knowing that whatever we do is good enough. Oh, I love it. Look at my friend Ann. Oh, my Lord, have mercy on my soul. Woo. She's got on pink rollers.
I made a commitment to myself to be here, and even though I wasn't ready, here I am.
Well, here you are. You kept your word. Those who don't know Ann, I want to tell you about Ann. She is one of the best therapists that ever was born. She's a psychologist. She's a PhD. She is the one that discovered our friend Pia Melody. And she's the one that put Pia Melody on the map. She's the one that, Pia, and I love Pia. We became, good friends. We traveled some together and all. And Pia was very, very shy and left to her own devices. She would have stayed hidden in the closet with all of her knowledge. And brought her out of, and I'm talking about the closet, not the gay closet. I mean, I will say Pia loved gay people, but anyway, her knowledge. She was an RN, and but her husband Pat helped her a lot about, and what they developed was codependence. But this lady right here, Ann, is the one that, and see with those. So. Y'all are privileged to be in her presence today. She is one among the many that she's taught me a lot. We've been together been friends and colleagues for years. came really kind of close to putting in a treatment center with a friend of ours, and you remember that, our doctor friend. So we go back a long, long ways. All righty, so another thing is about letting go of comparison. Quit comparing yourself to someone else. We tend to do that, and if they kind of are ahead in their career or their retirement looks better than ours or blah, 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 and we compare ourselves to others. And then what happens is a lot of times we get mad at them because we can't be what we think they are. And if we really knew, they're probably comparing themselves to us, but let go of comparison. And then another thing, and where did he go? Where did my friend go? He was on there. There he is. There's Joseph. Good to see you, Joseph. So it's letting go of people pleasing. People pleasing is codependency 101. If I can just please you enough, maybe you'll love me enough. It is about love me, love me, love me. That people pleasing. And it's about learning to let that go. And really the only person that we need to please is ourselves, because if we are happy with ourselves, that's catching. That is catching. And other people are going to pick that up. And then, it can spread. And I will tell you, when you are around a lot of people pleasing, someone that is a people pleaser, it just wears you out, because they a lot of times want to take care of you. They want to run the show. Anyway. So letting go of people pleasing. And then all of this equals letting go of control. The big C, codependency is about the big C. The big C called control. And I think control is a lot about low self-esteem. Because when we're in control or think that we have to control everything around us so we will be okay with ourselves, that is living outside ourselves. That is codependency. And so growth requires, if we're going to grow into the new year, it requires space. And space, enough space to grow in, to grow. And I've got some friends on here, I'm not going to call any names, but someone on here is the exact same age as I am. And we're not going to tell you what that is. But some of you are not quite up to our age, but you're getting there, Cam. You're getting there. You're going to catch up with me one of these days. But I don't care what age we are. We can still grow. We can grow. Otherwise, we get stagnant. And that's why I keep doing what I'm doing, because if I didn't, I'd sit in there in that chair and become an old woman. So I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to sit in that chair. Now, I do sit in it. My daughter Kim lives on the property. She has a cute, precious apartment here. And so we spend our evenings together. Like, we'll have dinner, and then she'll we pick out a series to watch. And she has her chair, and I have she has Papa's old chair. And anyway, we sit and cover up with our little blankets, and we watch a series. But otherwise, I stay out of that chair, because that chair is just like a trap. It could just, trap me to where I wouldn't want to get up and go do anything. So only time I sit down, I was such a work addict. My work addiction came as close to killing me as my eating disorder ever thought about doing, because it comes into that perfectionism, never, thinking I did it good enough, comparing myself to other people, and if I just did this and that. So work addiction, working 80, 90 hours a week nearly killed me. I don't do that anymore by the grace of God. I had to, and I didn't even know that there was anything called Work Addicts Anonymous until I found out that they had a meeting in Dallas, and I drove up there. Nevertheless, what we recommend here at Shades is there's 24 hours in a day, 24 hours, 8 hours rest. That's what's recommended. Some people need more than that. I don't know that I have ever gotten 8 hours sleep in my life. I'm not a big sleeper, except when I get in my chair. Maybe I'll doze, But anyway, 24 hours, break it down, 8 hours rest, 8 hours work, and 8 hours of play. And that 8 hours of play includes going to meetings. It means socializing. It means, and my nose is running, that's why I'm doing this, So, be careful of those 24 hours. The place I am in life, 24 hours is very precious, and I don't want to waste any of them, And so you break it down to 8 hours rest, 8 hours play, work, and 8 hours play. And it's that play part that is usually hard for addicts. We know how to work, we know how to, tell everybody else how to work, we know how to do this and that. But when it comes to really enjoying life and playing, we sometimes have a hard time with that. I had to learn how to play. And Ann has met my friend, she's no longer with us, but Barbara Caraway down in Florida. Barbara Caraway was another one of those wonderful therapists. And she had a joke for everything, kind of like my husband, RL. But Barbara taught me how to play. And sometimes I was just so bored. I thought, when are we going to get back to your house and work? When are we going to go see clients? When are we going to do that workshop? When are we going to do this, do that, But Barbara taught me how to play. And one of the things that she did, and we had a pretty full schedule. I would go down and work with her clients. She'd come out here and work with ours. So I thought we had a pretty good full schedule. And she knew about my work addiction. And one day I got up early and she had us a little lunch packed. Now, my friend Barbara was very overweight, but every time I would go, her house would look like mine. It would be all healthy food. And I thought, well, she just does this all the time. And I don't know why she's overweight, but anyway, one day I opened the closet out in the garage, and that's where she'd stuff all of the food that she ate. When I came, she'd hide the food from, but anyway, not for me, but from just so I wouldn't know that she was overeating, but the evidence was there. But anyway, she had this little lunch packed for us, and here I was on our schedule, and when we're going to start doing this. And she said, well, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go to the zoo. I said, what? We're going to go to a driving zoo. You drive through this zoo and see live animals. And she kind of pitched me this bag of animal food. And she said, we're going to go feed the animals. Now, when we got there, keep in mind, there was a huge sign there, do not feed the animals. Do not feed the animals. But we had food to feed the animals because that's what Barbara did. She was one of the best Southern cooks I've ever seen. That was her love language. So I would not feed the animals because I am not a rule breaker, but she fed them, and I shamed her for it. My job was shaming her for. But anyway, Barbara would do stuff like that. When I thought that we just had a tight schedule, she'd say, no, you're getting a massage first. Or we're going to go do this, we're going to do that. She held life very loose in her head. And that was some things that she really taught me, is to quit taking life so serious. Lord help, quit taking it so serious. So she helped me to learn to let go and grow in being more childlike. Uh, I really didn't have a childhood, and some of you didn't. Some of you really did not have a good childhood or a free childhood, where there was freedom to really be a child. I didn't have that. And I know every one of your stories, and some of you were like me. I mean, you really didn't have a childhood. You had a lot of expectations put on you. So one of the things, in my recovery is when adult children of alcoholics, our friend Claudia Black, when she came out with the first book, it'll never happen to me. It was all about, she did not even know her father was an alcoholic, and he was a severe alcoholic. But anyway, she started Adult Children of Alcoholics. And I traveled a little with her, and what Claudia Black has taught us, is one of the things is how to play. Adult children of alcoholics do not know how to play, so that's important in growing. And to grow, it requires allowing yourself space to, and it comes from release. Release the baggage that, release the baggage that you have to do this and this and this and this. I am not as much, but I used to be such a list maker. But my husband and I raised 7 kids together, and you had to have a list going, or you would, if you missed a beat, it would be like a caboose. Everything would pile up, so I had to stay on top of everything. Today I'm not responsible for anyone or anything but myself, and so I had to come through recovery to release having to do everything for everyone. I don't have to do that, and that is great. That's where growth comes from, is to create a space to grow in. And recovery is not about adding more rules. A lot of people in recovery think it's just, well, how do you do it? It's just rules, rules, rules. Well, if you're an addict of any sort, and that means eating disorder, alcoholism, drug addiction, work addiction, sex addiction, the list is long. It's 5 simple things. If you do 5 simple things a day, you're going to recover. And if you don't, you probably won't. And those 5 simple things is, you wake up of a morning. I used to wake up and hit my knees. But now that I've got knee problem, I don't hit my knees because I have a hard time getting up. So I just do my prayer and meditation in my bed before I ever get out of bed. So first, number 1 of those 5 things is make conscious contact with God. How easy is that? And ask for another day of abstinence, regardless of what that abstinence is. Just say, God, help me to be abstinent today from whatever your addiction is. And the second thing is, you get up and you take action. And that you call your sponsor. This is not a 12-step program. It's not a help yourself program. It is about one person reaching out to another and helping. So make conscious contact with God, conscious contact with someone else in the program. It is about working the steps with that person. It is about going to meetings. And then the 5th thing is thanking God at night. 5 things. How hard is that? If you've stayed abstinent or sober, thank Him at night, because, sobriety and abstinence is a gift from God. I do not think, for food addicts, abstinence is a gift from God. Now we take the action, and what the action is, we get on a meal plan, whatever that is. If that meal plan doesn't work, go get to another meal plan. Feed yourself appropriately. And then for alcoholics, it means no alcohol. 0, zip. Isn't that right, Jeff? Am I saying that right? No alcohol. drugs, no drugs. Food is different. Food is, and I've had alcoholics that I've treated that have switched addictions and switched over to food. And then they would come from intensive or something to work on the food. And they would say the food piece is the hardest thing I've ever had to look at. They said alcohol was easy. You just put the plug in the jug, put it in a cage, like putting a tiger in the cage. You don't ever have to take that tiger out. With food, we have to take it out 3 times a day, walk that tiger around the cage, feed it, try to get that sucker back in there. And so we have to deal with our substance every day. But flip it in your mind. We get to enjoy wonderful food 3 times a day. And there's over 242, you check it out. There's over 242 different types of food, wonderful different types of food that we can choose from, that we can eat, feed ourselves healthy. And so recovery is not so much about adding a lot of rules, it is about getting abstinent from whatever the substance is. And I'll tell you, my daughter Kim, and she's given me permission to share, if it might help another person. But I watched my daughter Kim through the years, and she would go from one addiction to another addiction to another addiction, try this one again, try this one, go back to that. And I'm going to report I am a proud mom. I'm proud of my daughter. She has struggled with addictions since she was 13 years old. So she has 14 years of good, clean sobriety. And what this last go around, what she says is if you use, and she was referring to herself and others, if you're using any mind-altering chemical or activity, you're not sober. Any mind-altering chemical, you might be sober from alcohol and eating yourself to death. You might be abstinent from your codependency, and maybe you've gone to drinking. A lot of codependents do. I've known a few that have done that. So it's about switching addictions, and I like what Kim said. If you're not clean and sober, and ever substance or behavior, you're not sober if you're not abstinent. So think about that. So recovery is not about adding more rules. It's about subtracting the blocks to freedom. What's blocking you off from the sunlight of God's Spirit? What is keeping you from recovery? What is keeping you? There is something blocking. And that's where, the 12 steps come in. I'm going to tell myself, or my daughters, I'm very proud of my daughters and myself. One of my youngest daughters, she has the most wonderful sponsor in the world. And anyway, the 3 daughters and I, we had a little misunderstanding. We had some conflict, and what her sponsor encouraged us to do was to work the steps together as a family. If you want a challenge, you do that. You work the steps and meet once a week and go through the steps with your family. And we've done it. And last night we are up to step 9, and it's a men's making time, and it's been a wonderful experience. I never dreamed in 1,000,000,000,000,000,000 years when I started this journey in Al-Anon that even one family member would join me. Of course, I was hoping they would, and I kept a big book in the bathroom and in the bedroom and everywhere. I hoped my husband would read it, and I gave kids literature all the time. But when I quit doing that, it created space. It created an opening. I released my family. And when that happened, each one of them in their young adult life, one of and practiced their own addiction. And then, through addiction, they had pain. And through addiction, they've all, by the grace of God, have found recovery. And so, what a blessing to sit in a 2-hour meeting with my 3 daughters that are all in recovery and work the steps on an issue that we had. Anyway, it was powerful, and I will tell you, it was not easy. I didn't just think, oh, good, today is Tuesday, we get to do this again. No, I didn't, because, when you really are going to do something like that, it's about getting honest, and it's not about pointing the finger at them. They were all pointing at me. Anyway, it is about getting that stuff out on the table and looking at it. It's been quite a journey, and we're talking about what are we going to do now? Are we going to continue meeting? What I thought of is, why don't we let this be a beginning of a women's group? I don't know what it'd look like, but it's been delightful doing this, and we're not through yet. But we're up to step 9. So anyway, it's been quite a challenge, and who would have ever thought? This is where sponsors come in. A good sponsor will look at the whole situation, and if you have a seasoned sponsor, they will give you assignments that maybe you've never heard of. I've been around the block for almost 50 years in some form of recovery, and I've never heard of doing the steps with your family members. I mean, I always heard you do it separate, then you come back to that group different and treat your loved ones different. So she recommended that we do this together, and it's been a delightful, not always easy. I will not say that. It's been difficult. We had to get honest about things that, we didn't want to get honest about. Okay, so letting go doesn't mean life gets easy. It means when you let go, it gets lighter. You don't have to carry all of that load into 26, into the new year. Let it go. And, what, I'm all about the steps. I'm all about that base. No, I'm all about the steps, because the steps is a planned program of action that takes you from the problem to the solution. And if you do those steps, it was designed for alcoholics. And I always thought that AA loaned other entities the 12 steps, like OA and OA and Al-Anon and all the other A's. But my daughters and I were in New York City, and we visited the main office of AA. And they're in new offices now. They used to be in a little old bitty cramped space. It's gorgeous. They have layers, they have different floors. And so the guide took us into this one room. It was a library. And in that room, it had every big book for the different diseases and behaviors. There is a 12-step program for any problem you can dream of. They've got a 12-step program for it. And if you doubt that, go to a large city. I've been to Seattle many, many times. I love to go up there, because there is the Seattle area, and up in Canada around Vancouver and in New York City, any of the big towns, they have meetings for any problem that you might have. And I love it. So, what was I going to say? Anyway, working the what I saw, what I was telling the guide, I said, I'm just so grateful that AA loaned the program, the 12-step program, to to all of us for other problems. And he said, no, that would be like saying we loaned the Bible to people. This is sacred. The 12 steps are sacred, and no one owns the 12 steps. AA doesn't own the 12 steps. It is open for anyone to use it, So I was glad to hear that. I didn't know. I thought they had agreed to loan the program to all the rest of us, you know. So the 12 steps will work for any problem that you have. The only problem is people fail to work the steps. So, you know, we're going on a cruise. We're leaving in the morning, and I do workshops on the cruise. And I don't know why I decided to do this. I've done workshops through the countryside there a lot of different times. So what I'm going to be doing there is I'm going to really do a lot about step 3, because in step 3 is where we look at the unbalanced personality of an addict. The unbalanced personality, it all comes out of step 3. And you know, that unbalanced personality is we have character defects that I don't know, that I guess all normies have them, but not to the extent that addicts. You know, our character defects are so exaggerated, everybody sees them. We can't get away with nothing when we're into our disease, because those character defects, you know, flare their ugly head, like resentment, self-pity, fear, overdeveloped pride, you know, all of those things are character defects. This is how God made us. He gave us these. This is being a human being. Now, you know, you get on that other side and look at the traits of God. You know, God is love, tolerance, and patience. That's the only thing that can offset resentment, self-resentment, or self-pity. Is love, tolerance, and patience. You know, when you have a resentment towards someone and you can't stand their guts, you start, you know, the big book tells us about this. You know, you pray for that person. You pray for that person for 20 days and see how your thinking can switch about that person. So, you know, the God qualities are love, tolerance, and patience, and courage that offsets fear. And what offsets overdeveloped pride is humility. And, you know, a lot of addicts are lacking in humility, you know. And I'll give you, and I gave the girls this example last night. When I think of humility, I don't know if any of you have ever heard of Joe McQuaney or ever listened to his tapes or anything, but he developed a program for treatment centers based on the 12 steps, and then we used it at Shades. And anyway, I was at the Serenity House. We just started working with Joe, and he'd come down and teach us. You know, he'd do a workshop 2 or 3 days. Well, people in Abilene loved him. And so we were waiting for Joe to come, because he was going to spend all day with us. And the room was full. It was packed. People came in from AA. And anyway, we had a large crowd to listen to Joe. They went and picked him up at the airport, and the guy came in, and we kept waiting on Joe. I said, well, what happened to Joe? I thought maybe he'd gone to the bathroom or something. We kept waiting and waiting. So finally I went out in the lobby, and there Joe sat and was holding his little hat, sitting. And I said, Joe, what are you doing? He said, well, I looked in there in that room and saw all those people, and I thought y'all were having an important meeting in there. I said, we are, and you're the star of it. Come on in. That's humility. He did not even think that they were all grouped up for him. He didn't. He just was going to sit and wait till we called on him. That's humility. He was no big shot, you know, and he helped more people, I think, or as many as Bill ever thought about. I mean, he touched a lot of people, Joe, with what he did. I could talk about Joe forever and his wife. But anyway, all right, so letting go doesn't mean life gets easier, it gets lighter. So a gentle reminder is in step 10, and I love step 10 because step 10 is doing the first 9 steps over. Y'all know that? When you have a problem, if you will pause, push that panic button and pause and go over your mind, go over the steps. This is a practical way to live. It's not steps written on the wall in a meeting room. It is a way to incorporate it in your life to live on a daily basis. So you have a problem and you stop in midstream and do step one. And all you have to ask yourself is, what is the problem? What is the problem and how am I making this problem? And why am I so powerless? Look at your powerlessness about the problem. The powerlessness of how this problem is creating powerlessness in your life. That's step one, is just figuring out what's the problem. And step two is, what's step two? Came to believe if we're powerless, we need a power greater than ourselves. So all step two is, not all, it is the granddad of it all, is came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. That's 1 and 2. Now, nothing's changed yet. You're just gathering information. You're gathering facts. And then step 3 is you make a decision. Do I want to stay in this friggin' problem, or do I want to go toward the solution? That's all step 3 is. And if you're going to go toward the solution, immediately look at, do an inventory. What part am I playing in this upset? What part am I playing in this whatever problem I've got? And then immediately pick up the phone and call your sponsor and say, this is the problem I have and this is the part I'm playing in it and what can I do? And she or he will say, your character defect, blah, 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 is rearing its ugly head. This is what you're back into. You're back into your self-centeredness. Get off of yourself. And, that's what step 6 is, look at our character defects. And step 7 is we cannot remove our own character defects. I don't think we're capable of doing that. I do think we're capable of not acting out of them, and then God removes them. We quit acting out of our character defects. When I came home from treatment in 1985, I was like a calf on new legs. I was shattered. I couldn't even drive a car. I was abstinent from sugar for the first time since I was 4 years old. I got off of using over 100 laxatives every day. I was shattered. I really needed to stay longer, but I had to get back to my job and my kid and blah, blah, blah. So I got home on a Friday night. Saturday, I couldn't do anything. I was paralyzed. The founder of Overeaters Anonymous visited the unit where I was, Roseanne. She lived in LA, and she came and visited us. And she gave me her card with her number on it, and she said, you get home, call me sometime. And I said, yeah, but you're the founder of OA. And she said, yeah, and people have got me up on such a pedestal, they don't even call me anymore. Call me. So I had her number. And I was shattered. I could not do one friggin' thing. And there was not one OA meeting within a 200-mile radius. There was no recovering people in our town. We disbanded OA. I called one woman and she wasn't interested in starting OA back. Later she did, and she's the one that's kept it going. But anyway, nevertheless, I called Roseanne. And I was just crying, and I kind of got out, and she remembered meeting me, And she said, well, first you need to do, you need to get in there beside your bed and get on your knees and take step 7. And if you're wondering what character defect you need to ask God to remove from you, she said, it's self-pity. Then you get up off your knees and off of your ass and you go start OA meetings. You go somewhere for an OA meeting. So I drove to Fort Worth, Texas every Saturday morning for a year, and then came back and started meetings. Because she said, if you don't go to a meeting and you start meetings, then you'll get that big shot at us and think that meeting's yours. So you need to get with other people in recovery and then come back. And by the end of the year, we had a meeting or 2 meetings every day of the week. So that's what she taught me, is my character defect was self-pity. And that's what we have to have, is someone in our corner that is willing to tell us the truth. So daily, step 10 gives it, step 10, 11, and 12 gives us a daily release, a conscious contact with God, and a way to live different. We've got to live different, folks, if we're going to stay in recovery. If you want to stay miserable, don't work the steps. You can be, you can be clean and sober from any addiction, but if you're not working the steps, you're not going to be very happy. You're white knuckling it. So that's what I have. So what would it look like to enter this year open-handed, like, God, here it is. Here am I. What can I give? What can I receive? Open-handed. And then, instead of a clenched fist, God, give me, you better give me what I want, So that's what I have. And remember, we're not chasing a new version of ourselves. We're releasing what no longer works. All right, who would like to share? We've got some people on here. And I'm afraid she's going to go get those rollers out of her hair and comb her hair, so I'm going to call on Ann. Ann?